Hello, I'm the Plebe. 2 years ago, I created a YouTube channel. Oh, I made a lot of videos, did a lot of editing. I was a boozer, yeah, pretty much just a boozer. YouTube wouldn't let me release my review of Gladiator, did some more editing. But now I'm back on YouTube, and though the videos may have changed, the hassles are just the same. Where would we be without Comedy Central? This channel really broke the mold when it comes to comedy. From changing how far we could push adult animation to how far we could push sketch comedy, to how far we could push celebrity roasts, to providing one of the greatest platforms for up-and-coming stand-up comedians to make it big. Comedy Central has been making us laugh for years now, and has inspired entire other channels to take chances on some of the strangest and most unique comedy content around. And I'm here to talk about a show that could only have existed on this channel, and possibly Adult Swim, but nah, most likely just here. Strangers with Candy may have been short-lived, but it packs a punch like few comedy shows I've seen. It's rude, crude, offensive, ugly, and the characters are absolutely loathsome. And yet, it is one of the funniest fucking shows. It is so unapologetic with its sense of humor that it earns my respect. A lot of times you'll hear things like, they couldn't make this show nowadays, but Strangers with Candy goes way beyond that. This show is not a product of its time. Believe me, it's a surprise they got away with this shit when it came out. But I'm so thankful they did. This is a show so savage and with no redeeming qualities except for one. Every line, every delivery, every gag, every moment is designed to make you laugh. And if this type of humor isn't your thing, it won't work on you. But it certainly works on me. So get ready to sit at the welcome table, because I got something to say. Who wants cake? Usually, I do a recommendation of a show before getting into the complete review with spoilers, but Strangers with Candy is a little different. For starters, this show is formulaic and episodic enough that there really isn't anything to spoil. There are even a couple plot points that are established that are forgotten in later episodes. For example, Jerry is shown to be illiterate in one episode, but in a previous episode she knew how to spell Nick, which leads me to my second point. This show has jokes that are so out of pocket sometimes that I could pretty much use any random joke from this show as a barometer of whether you'll like it or not. Let's try this one.
We'd like you to spy on her.
Spy on her? Hey, I'm no squealer, all right? I'm not snarking on anybody. What'd she do?
We suspect she might be retarded.
Hi, Jerry.
Hey, Kimberly. So, how's your brain?
My brain?
Oh, listen, never mind. So, you going to, Good Time Island?
Of course I'm going. I'm secretary of the Pleasure Club.
Oh, right. Sometimes I can be so retarded.
If you like that joke, you'll like Strangers with Candy. If you didn't, you won't. That's my whole recommendation. Strangers with Candy ran from 1999 to 2000, with an actual theatrical film released in 2006. It was made as a parody of after-school specials that were popular in the 70s and 80s. Jerry Blank is a former junkie and hooker who is cleaning her act up and going back to high school. And she's hideous. I mean, look at her. Looking at her each and every episode, you can kinda understand why the show wasn't a hit. Jerry Blank was never gonna be a merchandise darling. The show was created by Amy Sedaris, Stephen Colbert, Paul Dinello, and Mitch Rouse, with the first three appearing as main characters in each episode, and Sedaris herself playing Jerry. These four had been working together for a while before the show was written. All four of them were in Second City and had already been in the short-lived comedy sketch show Exit 57. Strangers with Candy actually did start a few trends that either didn't exist or weren't common before it. It was the first live-action narrative series to ever air on Comedy Central, which sounds crazy considering it aired in 1999. That was pretty late. Although, and I must stress this, you have to use the word narrative very loosely with this show. Each episode is basically the same narrative. They do not build on each other. This show obeys the end of episode status quo rule like a lot of comedy shows of this type. It actually works towards the show's benefit because Jerry Blank never learns from her mistakes. This show was also part of one of the most important trends in television history: sitcoms not using laugh tracks anymore. There's a certain feeling of surrealism you get when watching this show. There's something about the acting, the dramatic music, the moments of fourth wall breaking, and especially things in rooms that shouldn't be there. The show really does feel like it takes place in a pocket universe, a disturbed and twisted mirror image of what high school and family life looks like here. Initially, Strangers with Candy may not seem like the most visually impressive comedy show. It takes place in a high school, the characters feel like tropes, etc. But when you look a little harder, you get to see just how much work was put into each episode. A lot of the jokes rely on props and the set itself, and Jerry Blank's makeup is kind of amazing. Amazingly ugly. Her face is actually some sort of combination of makeup and her making a face. If you only know Amy Sedaris from this show, looking up what she actually looks like is sort of amusing. In real life, she looks like a normal person, but you can still see a resemblance. Like, they put just enough makeup on her to make her ugly without changing her face entirely. This is even played for laughs in an episode where she gets a makeover. Every episode also ends with all the characters dancing. Just a fun, irrelevant gag that really shows how much fun the cast was having making this show. According to Vulture.com, the character was inspired by a 1970s short film called The Trip Back, about, and I quote, a former prostitute, junkie, jailbird turned public speaker who, as it turned out, Sedaris could do a funny impression of. It's funny to think that some poor woman who made some bad choices then turned her life around has been immortalized forever as Jerry Blank. Strangers with Candy's basic premise is putting its tropey characters into different situations and seeing what will happen. However, although these situations are inspired by lessons taught in the after-school specials, the situations themselves are generally twisted, with Jerry always making the wrong choice or learning her lesson for the wrong reasons. I'd like to point out that most of the recurring characters on this show are total shitbags with no redeeming qualities. Principal Blackman, whose name is already an obvious joke, is obsessed with himself. His pictures are hung everywhere in the school. Mr. Noblet and Mr. Jellyneck are secretly gay with each other, with Mr. Noblet being a family man who gives zero fucks about his family, and Mr. Jellyneck being an oversensitive, self-centered douchebag. Jerry's stepmom hates her, but for some reason tolerates living with her. Her dad is one of my favorite running jokes, a man who is frozen in an expression every time he's on screen, but who talks and does stuff off screen. Everyone is out to get Jerry, but the truth is that Jerry herself is human scum too. She'll fuck over anybody to become popular, which is hilarious because she's a 40-year-old felon. Like, why does she care what a bunch of high schoolers think of her? She'll also fuck anybody, and has a habit of wanting to bang high schoolers, even though she's 40.
Why don't you come to my crib after school, and I'll make your pinky all stinky.
If there is one character who actually does have a pure heart, it's Orlando. This guy is supposed to be Jerry's best friend, and she just shits all over him at every given moment, poor guy. But what about the jokes? Well...
Gee, I'm fresh out of cash. I wonder how I'll pay you for this.
Drake!
Jerry, hey, I was just thinking about you.
Why did you spread those vicious lies?
Because you didn't spread those vicious thighs.
Exactly. We didn't do anything.
Hey, you want to do it now?
Why would I do that?
Well, since everybody thinks we did it, I thought we might as well, enjoy it, right?
How dare you? That does make sense.
A few years back, I was pretty down. I had just started this job, and my plugs weren't taking. My parents were brutally murdered, and I was fat. So I turned to pot, hoping it would solve my problems. But you know something? The only thing it fixed was my life.
9 months ago, my entire life changed after a chance meeting in a truck stop restroom. Joffrey and I became friendlier than I ever thought imaginable. He befriended me repeatedly. Ever since, I've been afraid that those who aren't so friendly would find out about our friendship.
Yeah, this show is fucking hilarious. The setups themselves are perfect layups, and the jokes themselves, whether verbal or physical, are the slam dunks. But Strangers with Candy did end one day. There are several explanations as to why, but the one I like the most is, have you watched this fucking show? Of course it was gonna get canceled. Go watch the episode Who Wants Cake. Just go watch it right now. Also, again, Jerry Blank was never easy on the eyes. On top of whatever other offensive material was in this show, Jerry was always offensively ugly, and I have met people that just didn't like the show because they couldn't stand looking at her. And so, I'm of the opinion that the show just ran its natural course. 3 seasons was enough. The humor was amazing, but the episodes were all a little too similar to sustain for much longer. And if I'd had to look at this face any longer, this review might have taken a different turn. So 3 seasons was perfect. But then, a few years later, we got one more unexpected bonus from Strangers with Candy. A movie. What do I have to say about the movie? Honestly, not much. It's kinda bad. It's a prequel, but retcons parts of the show. For example, Noblet and Jellyneck started their relationship on the show, but here they already had one? And who's this guy? That's not Orlando, and they replaced his character, not just his actor. Though they did replace several actors who were in the same characters, which was kinda shitty. They did get some famous actors in there, like Philip Seymour Hoffman and Matthew Broderick, but overall, this film, which was released in theaters, by the way, did not need to be made. I don't think Strangers with Candy works as a movie, especially not if they're gonna retcon shit. So what happened after the show ended? Well, pretty much everyone involved had their careers launched, especially this guy. Yes, Stephen Colbert became a Comedy Central staple on The Daily Show, and then The Colbert Report. And he took this guy with him. Amy Sedaris has had a lengthy career of her own, which I won't go into too much detail with, though I will point out that she created and starred in At Home with Amy Sedaris, which is very much her sense of humor. Strangers with Candy has become a bona fide cult classic. Ain't that the way it goes with great shows that are only around for a little while? It has inspired all sorts of comedic actors and writers, some good, and some not so good. Ugh. But that makes sense. This is the kind of show that brings out the best and worst people, just as it brings out the best and worst in people. And I think that's important. Strangers with Candy is important. We live in a world where censorship has become the norm, especially when it comes to comedy, and I hate that. That frightens me. This is not the world I want to live in. So it's refreshing to know that there was a show this outrageous, this no-holds-bar, written by people who could take a joke for people who can take a joke. It really is that unique. And that rules. I do think Strangers with Candy died of natural causes, and as I've said before, I'm glad for that. Too long and this show definitely could have gotten stale. I have no doubt. But the next show like it could be just around the corner if the people in charge choose to foster it. I hope they do. Because if this...
What would I know about secret relationships, Chip? I'm in a very open, very married relationship with my wife.
See? That's her. Claire.
Picnic in the boiler room. 5 minutes.
Isn't funny if this...
I guess, and I'm just stabbing in the dark here, and I don't want this to affect our relationship, but I don't like black people.
Jerry, I'm a person of color.
Oh my God, I guess I do like black people. It just took a white one to prove it to me.
Isn't good TV? Then I don't know what is. Folks, thanks so much for watching my comeback review. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and consider donating $1 measly to my Patreon. And please be sure to check out my review of Gladiator on Patreon. That one is free. YouTube has blocked my aborted version once again. I put a lot of work into that. If you like the movie Gladiator, check it out. Link in the description.